When Planet of the Apes hit theaters in 1968, audiences thought they were watching pulp sci-fi with rubber masks. They walked out stunned by a political parable with the nastiest twist ending of its decade. Here are 20 weird facts you probably didn't know about Planet of the Apes. Author Pierre Boulle wrote the source novel, but he didn't write the Statue of Liberty finale. That bombshell came from Rod Serling, the mastermind behind The Twilight Zone. He reportedly drafted more than 30 versions of the script, chasing the perfect knockout punch. Boulle's book ended on an ape-run modern Earth, civilized but cold. No beachfront statue reveal. No shattered crown half buried in sand. Serling's punchline made the theme inescapable. Humanity did it to itself. Producer Arthur P. Jacobs loved it, but worried it was too on the nose. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. That single image sold the movie, the marketing, and the legend. It turned a sci-fi adventure into a cultural earthquake. Because sometimes the best twist isn't hidden in dialogue. It's standing broken in the surf, waiting to destroy you, and Serling knew exactly where to plant the bomb. Studio bosses feared ape makeup would look silly. Fox executives imagined cheap Halloween masks and audience laughter, so they demanded a costly test reel before greenlighting anything. John Chambers, a former dental technician turned makeup pioneer, built prosthetics that could move with an actor's face, not frozen rubber, living, breathing, scowling latex puzzles. The test impressed Fox so much they greenlit the film. Barely. Even then, executives thought it might be King Kong with speeches. The test became its own mini-movie, proof of concept on celluloid, and it unlocked the budget a little. Turns out convincing chimp cheeks can open studio wallets, just not wide. Chambers spent months engineering foam pieces that wouldn't crack when actors smiled or yelled. He glued appliances directly to skin, layered textures, painted veins by hand. The test footage survives in archives, a silent monument to belief in the impossible. Because before the world saw Planet of the Apes, a handful of suits watched Charlton Heston snarl through latex, and for once, they didn't laugh. They leaned forward. Chambers' work was so groundbreaking, the Academy gave him an honorary Oscar. There wasn't a competitive makeup category in 1968. Hollywood literally invented a special award to recognize him. Cast and crew spent 3 to 5 hours a day in his chairs. The appliances were foam latex puzzles glued to skin, painted, powdered, perfected. They moved, smiled, scowled, and never stopped sweating. Actors couldn't eat lunch without ruining their faces. They sipped liquids through straws, avoided direct sunlight, and prayed the glue held through takes. Chambers ran a factory disguised as a trailer, churning out identical gorilla scowls and orangutan wrinkles. His team applied, removed, cleaned, and rebuilt faces daily. The category wouldn't become official until 1981, 13 years later. Planet of the Apes changed faces, then changed the Academy. Because sometimes innovation arrives so fast, the rules have to catch up. And when they did, they named the category after what Chambers proved was possible. That you could make audiences forget they were watching actors. You could make them see apes. Charlton Heston's voice starts strong, then cracks into rasp near the middle. That wasn't just acting. He kept his throat irritated with cigarettes, coffee, and harsh whispers between takes. It sold Taylor's dehydration and near madness after the crash. Directors usually beg for vocal health. This one wanted vocal ruin. Heston even spaced dialogue to sound sunburnt, clipping consonants, dragging vowels through gravel. The more he suffered, the more real Taylor got. Method rasp, strangely effective, medically questionable. He refused lozenges, turned down tea, and smoked through lunch breaks to maintain the damage. Sound engineers captured every crack, every wheeze, every moment his voice gave out mid-sentence. It wasn't polished, it was broken, and broken sold survival better than any script note could, because Taylor wasn't a hero coasting through space. He was a man clawing through hell in a monkey suit universe. And Heston made sure every word felt like sandpaper dragged across your ears. Brutal, honest, unforgettable. Fox had just been scorched by Cleopatra's cost overruns, so Planet of the Apes got a tight budget and tighter schedules. Sets were reused, angles were cheated, and locations stood in for alien world. The makeup defactment rationed foam like gold, wardrobe recycled, and weathered costumes until they looked lived in. Even the spaceship interior was minimal. Blink and you miss it. Frugality birthed creativity. In saving money, they made the world feel raw and lived in. Production designer William Kreber built ape cities from plaster, wood, and prayer. He repurposed Western town facades, dressed them with totems and banners, and called it civilization. The cages holding humans were borrowed from a zoo supply warehouse. The tribunal set was a corner of a soundstage lit to look massive. Every penny showed on screen, but not in the way Fox feared. It didn't look cheap, it looked alien, strange, functional. Because when you can't buy spectacle, you build atmosphere. And atmosphere is what turned a low-budget gamble into a franchise that outlived its creators. Most of the alien desert was actually Malibu Creek State Park. The crash crash site, the canyons, the shoreline, California in disguise. Heat hit triple digits. Actors cooked inside latex, staggering between takes just to breathe. Dust got under masks and glued to sweat. The rocks looked otherworldly. The crew felt otherworldly exhausted. Turns out the strange new world was a short drive from Los Angeles, plus a detour into heat stroke. Director Franklin J. Schaffner chose the location for its brutal emptiness. No trees, no shade, no mercy. He wanted the landscape to punish Taylor, and it punished everyone. Makeup melted, costumes soaked through, water breaks became negotiations. But on camera, it worked. The desert felt vast, hostile, ancient, like a planet that had forgotten what mercy meant. And the crew's suffering translated into authenticity you can't fake in a studio, because sometimes the best special effect is just nature trying to kill you, slowly, on film. Acting through prosthetics meant rewriting emotion. Lips were glued down, cheeks barely moved. Roddy McDowell, playing Cornelius, relied on eyes, head tilts, and timing. Kim Hunter as Zira used crisp diction and exaggerated playful beats. Maurice Evans as Dr. Zaius turned his jaw into punctuation. The sound team looped tons of lines in post to fix muffled takes. The result was a new acting language. Mime meets Shakespeare with fur. McDowell wrote journals in character to understand Cornelius's worldview. He practiced turning his head instead of his mouth to show surprise. Hunter leaned into vocal melody, making Zira's curiosity sing through consonants. Evans made every pause feel like judgment. They couldn't rely on smiles or frowns, so they invented gestures, tilts, rhythms. The camera caught it all, and audiences read emotion not from faces, but from bodies in motion. Because when you can't show what you feel, you have to become what you feel. And these actors became apes. Not all apes were created equal. Orangutans were the political class. Gorillas were the military. Chimps were the scientists and progressives. That class system was baked into costume colors and hairstyles. It was social satire you could spot from the back row. Even the architecture mirrored this. Stately for orangutans, functional for chimps, imposing for gorillas. The movie taught civics with helmets and sideburns, and audiences got the message loud and clear. Costume designer Morton Hawk color-coded power. Orangutans wore rich browns and golds, draped in robes that suggested wealth. Gorillas got black leather and metal, armor that screamed enforcement. Chimps wore earth tones, practical fabrics, lab coats, and vests. You didn't need exposition, you just needed eyes. The hierarchy was visible, immediate, familiar. It mirrored human class systems so closely it felt like accusation. And that was the point, because Planet of the Apes wasn't about apes, it was about us, dressed in fur, repeating history's ugliest patterns. The costumes didn't just clothe actors, they indicted civilizations. Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape. It wasn't recorded on that day. Heston's big line was looped in ADR to cut through the mask-muffled chaos. The timing had to match twisted wrists and flaring nostrils. The set erupted when he shouted it for real in the booth. It became the line of the trailer, the posters, the parodies. Not bad for a redo in a tiny sound studio. On set, the moment played quieter, buried under gorilla grunts and scuffle noise. Heston delivered it with venom, but the microphones couldn't catch the snarl. So weeks later, in post-production, he stood alone in a recording booth and unleashed it again, louder, sharper, with every ounce of rage Taylor carried through 2 acts of humiliation. The engineers synced it frame by frame, matching lip movements hidden under ape hands. And when it hit the final cut, it exploded. Audiences cheered, critics quoted it, comedians mimicked it for decades. One looped line became the movie's battle cry, because sometimes the best take happens after the cameras stop rolling. Before cameras rolled, actors attended ape school. Movement coach and animal experts taught them to sit, walk, and gesture like their species. Chimps moved quick, alert. Gorillas planted and glowered. Orangutans conserved energy. Hands were a whole curriculum. Hooked fingers, open palms, controlled grooming motions. Even background extras drilled the social rules. The result was a society that looked coherent, not just costumed. Graduates of ape school, class of '68, still aced the reunion. Instructors brought in footage of real primates, dissecting posture and rhythm. Actors practiced knuckle walking until their wrists ached. They learned to hold fruit, to threaten without lunging, to show submission through shoulder drops. It wasn't optional. You didn't get on set without passing ape finals, and it showed. When the tribunal convenes, every ape moves with species-specific purpose. Gorillas swagger, chimps fidget, orangutans sit like stone. The choreography sold the illusion that this wasn't Hollywood. It was another world with its own rules, learned through repetition and sweat. Critics in 1968 saw more than a monster flick. They saw fallout fear, civil rights anxieties, and scientific hubris. Apes banned heretical research. Humans were rounded up and silenced. Hearings echoed McCarthyism, with scrolls instead of subpoenas. It was a popcorn movie with a dissent relenting heart. The studios sold action, the film sold allegory, and audiences bought both. Dr. Zaius censored archaeology, burned evidence, jailed dissenters. Sound familiar? The film arrived during Vietnam, during protests, during riots over race and war. It didn't preach, it mirrored. The apes feared their past, so they buried it. Humans feared their future, so they ignored it. And in the middle, a lone astronaut screamed truths no one wanted to hear. Serling's script didn't need speeches, it just needed context, because when you set satire on another planet, people watch without flinching. Then they go home and realize the planet was Earth all along, and the apes were them. The human astronaut could have been someone else. Names floated included Burt Lancaster and Paul Newman. Heston brought biblical gravitas and a contrarian edge. He pushed for a harsher, more cynical hero. Taylor starts misanthropic and stays complicated. You're not meant to love him, you're meant to believe him. Casting a larger-than-life star made the fall of mankind feel personal. Lancaster wanted Taylor softer, more tragic. Newman considered it, but passed for something lighter. Heston read the script and saw a prophet without a temple. He leaned into Taylor's bitterness, his contempt for humanity, his refusal to bow. Schaffner let him run with it. The result was a hero who felt like an anti-hero, a savior who hated what he was saving. Taylor wasn't noble, he was necessary, and Heston played him like a man who'd already lost faith before the ship ever crashed. Because the twist only works if you believe Taylor would curse the species he came from, and Heston made you believe. Test screenings showed something wild. Viewers loved the apes more than the human lead. Zira's warmth and Cornelius's quiet rebellion became the emotional core. Fox pivoted marketing to highlight them. Roddy McDowell wrote journals and character to nail Cornelius's worldview. Kim Hunter fought to keep Zira witty and subversive. The audience's heart belonged to the scientists with snouts. Irony, the apes felt more human than the humans. McDowell played Cornelius with nervous intelligence, a scholar caught between truth and survival. Hunter gave Zira a playful defiance, questioning authority with a smile. Together, they became the film's conscience. Taylor was rage. Zira and Cornelius were hope, and audiences clung to hope even when it wore fur. Fox noticed. Posters shifted, trailers added more ape dialogue. The sequels centered on them because sometimes the sidekicks carry the soul of the story. And in Planet of the Apes, the soul wore prosthetics and spoke in careful, compassionate whispers. Beware the beast man. It wasn't just scripture, it was a mirror. Writers laced the sacred text with twisted reflections of human history. It justified oppression with a pious tone that felt disturbingly familiar. The orangutans weren't villains, they were bureaucrats of fear. It's satire that smiles while it bites, and it bit everyone equally. The scrolls preached caution, but enforced control. They warned of human violence, then used violence to silence human voices. The logic was circular, authoritarian, and ancient. Every empire has used fear dressed as wisdom to hold power, and Planet of the Apes put that hypocrisy on trial, literally. Dr. Zaius quoted scripture while caging heretics. He defended tradition while destroying evidence. The film didn't condemn religion, it condemned weaponized belief, because when faith becomes a tool for silencing truth, it stops being faith. It becomes propaganda in ceremonial robes. And the apes weren't the only ones guilty. Linda Harrison's Nova barely speaks, but she's not just decoration. Director Franklin J. Schaffner wanted her to be the audience's mute witness. She responds, watches, learns. The costume team kept her look minimal to contrast with layered ape outfits. Harrison braved the same heat and dust without the shade the masks provided. Her silence made Taylor louder, and her presence made the ending hurt more. Nova didn't need dialogue. She had eyes that tracked every injustice, every cruelty, every moment Taylor broke. She became the silent reminder of what humanity had lost: language, culture, dignity. Harrison played her not as passive, but as observant. She touched, she followed, she mourned. And in the final scene, when Taylor collapses at the statue, Nova stands beside him, witnessing, because sometimes the loudest performance is the one that never says a word, and Nova's silence screamed louder than any monologue ever could. Composer Jerry Goldsmith threw out the orchestra rulebook. He used ram's horns, stainless steel bowls, prepared piano, and odd time signatures. Percussion hit like panic. Melodies lurked instead of singing. Goldsmith even wore a gorilla mask to conduct one cue just to set the mood. The soundtrack didn't comfort, it unsettled, and it rewired sci-fi scoring for a generation. Traditional orchestras play in harmony. Goldsmith played in chaos. Strings scraped, brass blared dissonance. dissonance. Percussion sounded like bones breaking. He wanted the music to feel alien, hostile, wrong, and it worked. The hunt scenes pulse with primal dread. The tribunal hums with menace. The finale swells with apocalyptic sorrow. No violins to guide you home, just horns and hammers and the sound of a world ending. Because Planet of the Apes didn't need a beautiful score. It needed a score that sounded like humanity's last breath, and Goldsmith delivered that, one screech at a time. Roddy McDowall didn't appear in the second film due to another commitment, but he returned for sequels and the TV series. His makeup tests became templates for future Apes. The franchise exploded. 4 sequels in 5 years, a TV show, an animated series, then a modern reboot trilogy decades later. The latex had legs, and they kept running. Beneath the Planet of the Apes hit theaters in 1970. Escape from the Planet of the Apes followed in 1971. Conquest in 1972. Battle in 1973. Each film pushed deeper into allegory, satire, rebellion. The TV series aired in 1974. The animated show in 1975. McDowall returned again and again, aging through prosthetics, becoming the franchise's anchor. Then silence. Until 2001's Tim Burton remake. Then silence again. Until 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes rebooted everything with motion capture and modern rage. The original film didn't just spawn sequels, it spawned a mythology. Because once you crack open the future and show humanity its grave, people keep coming back to stare. That final beach was Point Doom, California. The crew hid the statue prop with careful angles and a restricted set. Scripts used code names. Extras weren't told the twist. Even the call sheets were vague near the final days. Marketing teased apocalypse but never showed her. Audiences gasped and theater lobbies erupted into debates on the way out. The Statue of Liberty wasn't a full build. It was a factual facade, half buried in sand, angled to hide the seams. Only key crew knew what it represented. Heston filmed the scene alone, collapsing into the surf, pounding the sand, screaming at the broken crown. Schaffner shot it in one long take, no cuts, no safety net. When the dailies screened, the room went silent. They knew they had lightning in a bottle, and when the film premiered, audiences who thought they were watching escapism walked out shell-shocked. Because the twist wasn't just clever, it was devastating, and it turned a sci-fi adventure into a cultural reckoning. Rumor has it Rod Serling considered legal action when later adaptations reused his twist without credit. Officially, he got paid and credited as screenwriter, but the industry recycled his concept widely. Twilight Zone DNA is everywhere here. He turned pulp into parable, then parable into pop culture. His shadow's on that beach as much as Taylor's footprints. Serling never sued, but he did notice. Every time a film borrowed his apocalypse reveal structure, his name was quietly absent. Every time a twist ending punched through with social commentary, Serling's fingerprints were invisible. He didn't fight it. He just kept writing, kept exposing hypocrisy through allegory, kept proving that the best science fiction holds up a mirror. And Planet of the Apes held up the biggest mirror of all. Because Serling didn't just write an ending, he wrote a warning, and the world has been repeating it ever since. Actors reported a weird phenomenon. Wearing ape faces made them more expressive with their bodies. They said it felt freeing, not limiting. The crew began to read emotions from posture, not lips. Scenes played like dance with dialogue layered on top. The technology forced artistry, and that's why the movie still feels alive under all that latex. McDowall moved like a thinker, Hunter moved like a rebel, Evans moved like a judge. Without facial expressions to rely on, they became their entire bodies. Hands told stories, shoulders carried weight, even stillness became performance. And the camera caught all of it, because when you strip away the face, you reveal the soul. And Planet of the Apes revealed souls trapped in systems, fighting for truth, drowning in fear. The masks didn't hide humanity, they exposed it. And 50 plus years later, the film still swings between pulp thrills and serious prophecy. Not because of the budget, not because of the effects, because of the people inside the latex who refused to let the masks make them invisible. They made the masks unforgettable. 50 plus years later, Planet of the Apes still swings between pulp thrills and serious prophecy. It started as a gamble, a low-budget sci-fi experiment with rubber faces and radical ideas. It became a franchise, a warning, a mirror held up to humanity's worst instincts. The makeup changed the cinema. The twist changed endings. The allegory changed what science fiction could say. And beneath it all, a lonely beach in California, a broken statue, and one astronaut screaming at the truth. Because sometimes the best stories don't take us to another world. They show us the one we're already destroying. Which of these facts surprised you, and what classic should we uncover next?